Akane Nishino is a former actress who retired from stardom after being kidnapped by a fan-turned-stalker. Since then, she lives a normal high school student life but can't completely let go of the attention and recognition that comes with being a celebrity, so she does everything in her power to be liked by everyone. She's become an honor student in order to please the teachers, she's become popular to be favored by classmates, and she's even gone as far as to become a pick-me girl to grab the guy's attention. You could say she never quit being an actress. However, there's still one pesky guy, Minoru Kajino, who refuses to simp for her, and this infuriates her. Despite sitting next to her in class for 3 months, he can't remember her name, calling her Anna, Anastasia, and even Ankita, but never Akane. What she hates the most about him is that he never seems to look at her while talking as if there's something more interesting behind her. Who does this mid guy think he is? One day, Akane calls her driver as usual to pick her up after school. However, he doesn't pick up even though she tries reaching him for an hour. Having no choice, she decides to walk home alone for the first time since the kidnapping incident. Guess what? She gets kidnapped again by 2 guys who chloroform her and take her into their shady van. The last thing she sees before fainting is Minoru, who silently watches everything unfold. She awakens to find herself tied up and gagged in an abandoned warehouse with 2 kidnappers who intend to exchange her for a handsome ransom. One of them starts acting gross when they're interrupted by a masked intruder who breaks through the glass roof and introduces himself as stylish Thug Slayer. He's not as stylish as Batman, though. He easily takes down the first gross guy, causing the other to get excited that he finally has a worthy opponent since he left the army, where his hobby was to teabag soldiers and probably dabbled in friendly fire on the side. The ex-soldier drops his gun and fights with a knife while stylish Thug Slayer defends with a crossbar, eventually disarming him. The man easily beats him in hand-to-hand combat because of his stronger physique, forcing the fruity vigilant to use his true power by flipping the crowbars to make the curved ends free. One blow with the curved end breaks the man's wrist. He continues to follow up on his attack, each with unbelievable force, making the man realize he's facing the infamous ski mask berserker who annihilated the city's main biker gangs. The ex-soldier is no match for him and gets beaten to death. Akane thinks it's her turn when he faces her with a knife in his hand, but he merely cuts her binds off and tells her to be careful while walking home at night before disappearing into thin air. After that, she calls the police and her father uses his influence to keep the case hush-hush. She never found out the identity of the stylish Thug Slayer. The next day, she goes to school as if nothing happened and greets everyone, including Minoru. However, this time he greets her by her correct name and looks directly at her. She can't shake the feeling that he might be her knight in shining armor. However, she never has the chance to confirm it because he suddenly dies after getting run over by a truck. Truck-kun has claimed yet another victim. When will he have enough? Just like many others before him, Minoru gets eyes-kayed after Truck-kun's kiss of death. He reminisces about his life, where his lifelong dream was to become a hero. He underwent rigorous training in different martial arts, weight and endurance training, and weapon wielding to become as strong and fierce as he could, but it was never enough to match the power of the superheroes in his comic books. At best, he could be the stylish Thug Slayer by night and beat up a few no-good ruffians. Hence, he reincarnates himself into a world where he's a hero with magical abilities, has a harem of beautiful women by his side to fight evil from the shadows, and is known as the Eminence in Shadow. Okay, now he's cooler than Batman. In this magical world, his name is Sid Kajinu, and is part of the aristocratic Kajinu family that has raised multiple generations of Dark Knights, fighters who enhance their physical abilities using magic. This generation is also expected to be blessed because of his highly talented, prodigious sister, Claire. Sid hides in her shadow and maintains the image of being an average and ordinary background character so that he can secretly be the fearsome Eminence in Shadow who bullies bandits by night. One day, he discovers a living but rotting blob that emits a powerful magic wavelength, so he uses it for his experiments. After a month of failing to do anything productive with it, he accidentally transforms the blob into its state, revealing that it was an elven girl all along. When she comes to her senses, he plays the part of a noble hero named Shadow who totally meant to revive her. He explains that the fairy tale of the 3 legendary heroes who defeated the demon named Diablos is true. As revenge, Diablo cast a curse on all the heroes' descendants to turn them into rotting blobs of flesh, but someone twisted history and spread the belief that the blobs aren't cursed beings but possessed by scorned spirits. When asked who is behind such a thing, he stutters and stalls by saying the mastermind is one who cannot be named. However, the elf persists, so he looks at a rum bottle named Cult of Diablo and claims that the ones responsible are a group of neo-Nazis who are plotting to revive Diablo, and his mission is to put an end to their evil schemes. As gratitude for saving her, she pledges to give her life to help him with this mission. She's very intense right off the bat and looks forward to getting other hero descendants to join their cause, build a base of operations, acquire funding, blah blah blah. He's more interested in coming up with a cool name for their organization and settles on Shadow Garden. He also gives the elf girl a name, Alpha. 3 years pass swimmingly after his first act, and on the surface, he's still a hopeless 13-year-old dark knight in training who can never beat his sister. He fakes being bad at fencing but visualizes the lethal moves he could pull on her by combining many martial arts techniques from his past life in his head. Their sparring practice is put on hold by one of their attendants who informs the sister that the guests for her farewell party are starting to show up. She tells Sid to continue practicing even when she's gone and goes with the attendant to get ready. As is tradition for the nobility, Claire is being sent to the royal capital to attend the Midgar Academy for Dark Knights at the age of 15. However, she is nowhere to be found on the day of the departure, and her room is in a complete mess, indicating she put up a fight against someone who abducted her. The attendant transforms into her true self as another elven girl named Beta, one of the many Shadow Garden members Alpha has recruited. She informs Sid that Alpha is already looking for clues to find Claire. She is most likely alive, and the kidnapper is probably a high-ranking official of the Cult of Diablos who suspects she is one of the hero's descendants. Of course, Sid knows they're mostly an organized group of bandits. She shows him the location of their hideouts, but states they don't yet know which one they're keeping Claire in. Sid chucks his knife on the map and confidently says they're hiding her at that location, only to realize the knife didn't land on any of the hideouts. Beta thinks he's a genius and believes there's a secret hideout they missed that only Sid is smart enough to catch. He wonders how she manages to put up this act so consistently. Anyway, the girl bosses, one of them being a furry, infiltrate the secret hideout located just where Sid predicted and effortlessly massacre the guards. The leader shows up once his men have been turned to chum and faces the 7 Shadow Garden girls who state their mission is to eradicate the Cult of Diablos. He is shocked that they know about the cult and draws his sword, but Alpha single-handedly slashes his chest and demands he spills everything he knows. Instead, he takes the red pill and transforms into an angry insult. He's still no match for Alpha, so he escapes to the lower floor by creating a hole in the ground. They don't bother pursuing him because they know their master Sid is down there waiting for him. In reality, Sid lost his way in the basement of the hideout, but coincidentally runs into the man. He senses the man has more magic power than Alpha but doesn't know how to use it properly. He kindly gives him a few lessons on how to use magic properly with a live demonstration that causes the man to get gravely injured. He can't believe a little boy is playing him like a fiddle when he hasn't been defeated by an opponent since he picked up a sword. He swallows all the red pills and turns into a giant redneck insult, spewing how Sid doesn't have a clue how dark the dating world is and that they're all powerless and helpless in front of it. Sat gets tired of his monologue and uses a massive burst of magic energy to strike him down. In his last moments, the man realizes that just maybe Sid is Chad enough to rule the world. Claire escapes from the hideout amidst the chaos and returns to the Kajanu Manor herself, without knowing Sid's involvement in it. After recovering from her injuries, she goes to Midgar Academy as planned. Sid is still oblivious to the fact that the Cult of Diablos is very much a real threat. One day, the girls bid farewell to Sid, saying it's time they leave Sid's side. They claim that the Cult of Diablos is a massive organization that runs on a global scale, so they have to split up to hunt and fight against all parts of it. Sid believes this is just their nice way of saying they've outgrown the role-playing. Once he turns 15, he enrolls at Midgar Academy, where he maintains his brand image of being the average Joe and becomes friends with Pinot and Skell, who are the poster boys for mediocrity. They all agreed on a penalty for the guy who scored the least on their most recent test. The loser would have to confess to the most sought-after girl in school, Princess Alexia, who has turned down even the most outstanding guys. Sid intentionally scores the lowest so that he can experience the classic brutal rejection of a background character. He practices the whole day and night before so that he acts his role of a nervous, stammering idiot flawlessly in front of the princess. However, to everyone's shock, she accepts his proposal and becomes his girlfriend, claiming she's been waiting for someone like him. She invites herself to their table at lunch, drawing unwanted attention to him. She gets served a fancy meal with the finest cuts of meat and the most vibrant veggies, but it's too much for her to finish alone. Sid obnoxiously shovels her food down his mouth before even being offered in hopes of disenchanting her and getting dumped on the first day. However, she instead says she's promoted him to the highest Section 1 in Royal Bushin fencing class so they can take their afternoon physical education together. How romantic. In his first Section 1 fencing class, he spars with Alexia and notices her technique is utterly plain without any use of magic. He mirrors her technique all the way till the end of the class. Mrs. Xenon, the instructor of the class, approaches her, and they end up quarreling over her decision to make Sid her boyfriend. This makes him realize that she's been betrothed to Mrs. Xenon against her wishes, so she's dragged a low-class patsy like him to control and get out of her problem. She admits to it when he confronts her about it, but doesn't let him go by blackmailing him that she'll report his fake confession as misconduct to the student council, which would make his school life 10 times more inconvenient. He continues to whine, so she tosses money at him to shut him up. It works, and he gladly sells himself to his new sugar mommy. They make a picture-perfect couple in public, but behind closed doors, she runs on spite and insults, but luckily he has a bit of degradation kink. One day, while publicly sharing ice cream, he asks her what her problem is with marrying Mr. Xenon. She says she doesn't trust his perfect superficial reputation, and that she judges people by their flaws, of which she's found none on Xenon yet. However, anyone who doesn't have flaws is lying or not right in the head. 2 weeks pass like this, and he makes himself comfortable in the background boyfriend character role. While they're on a train, she points out how his fencing style reminds her of herself, and she hates her fencing style. She has tried all her life to get as good as her sister Iris, who is currently the strongest Dark Knight, only to be called Fencer Ordinaire due to her mastery of only the basics. He points out that he actually likes her fencing style, which makes her think back to when she embarrassingly lost a fencing competition, but her sister said the same thing to her. She feels as pathetic as she did at that moment and decides to end their fake relationship. The next day, he walks with Paul and Skell to school and gets confronted by Xenon, who accuses him of being the prime suspect for Princess Alexia's sudden disappearance last night. He surrenders himself for questioning, realizing he's in quite the pickle. Alexia finds herself locked in a cell at the mercy of a mad scientist who draws her blood, claiming that it's demon blood he needs to succeed in his experiments. In the adjacent cell is a mutated girl who silently endures his abuse and watches everything. She's not too scared at first, believing her sister will rescue her soon. However, the mad scientist takes a lot of her blood and feeds her just enough gruel to sustain her over the course of days. Meanwhile, Side gets beat up by a couple of interrogators to reveal what he knows. He takes this prime opportunity to act like a pathetically unfortunate innocent NPC who begs to be freed. After 5 days of confessing nothing, Princess Iris gives the orders to release him under constant watch. He returns to his dorm to find Alpha waiting to inform him that their investigations on the cult are going smoothly and the strength of Shadow Garden grows steadily by the day. He thinks it's cute how the girls occasionally take some time out from their ordinary lives to play along with his roleplay. She says that Alexia was kidnapped by the cult and that she's definitely being kept alive as a blood donor. She tells him to wait for their next move and leaves. When the preparations are ready, Beta comes to inform him that the plan is to launch simultaneous attacks on all the cult's hideouts located within the capital using 114 recruited soldiers. He is amazed over how they can afford to hire so many actors but plays along, saying he will commence the attack. He uses one of Alexia's boots to detect her magic traces but gets caught by 2 Night Order soldiers who beat up him. He simply kills them off with his slime sword and moves ahead while his other Shadow Garden girls begin their large-scale attack all over the city in search of Alexia. The mad scientist realizes he's run out of time and desperately injects the mutated girl with blood he collected from Alexia despite her warnings. She turns into a demon, instantly kills the scientist, and frees Alexia before wreaking havoc in the capital. Alexia tries escaping from the facility but runs into Mr. Xenon, who reveals he was funding the scientist's research. With her blood and his research, he'll easily get a position in the Rounds, a group which consists of the 12 highest-ranking knights in the Ninth Order. He admits that Iris would have been a better catch, which pisses Alexia off. She attacks him, but he easily counters the same basic attacks she always uses. She surprises him with a magic-infused move, but he promptly ends the fight and tells her she's coming with him. At that moment, a man clad in pure black arrives and introduces himself as Shadow. Xenon isn't deterred by him because he's only been defeating the cult's small fries so far and hasn't fought a core member like him yet. However, he soon puts his foot in his mouth when his attack has no effect on him. Meanwhile, Princess Iris faces the rampaging demon but is unable to kill it because of its insane healing powers. Alpha arrives at the scene saying she's only causing an excruciating pain and destroys it with one powerful blow. After that, she tells Iris to stay out of Shadow Garden's way and makes a swift exit. Underground, Xenon uses all his magical power to fight Shadow, but he effortlessly defends against his blows with minimal magic. Alexia observes from afar and admires Shadow's technique, not knowing he's Sid, describing it as an excellent mastery of the type of simple swordsmanship she's always strived for at its core. Xenon downs the red pills to turn himself into a monster, claiming to have the power of an almighty. As flashy as it might be, Shadow is unfazed and continues to dominate. Finally, he unleashes the ultimate move he's always dreamed of using, the power of a nuclear bomb and a single magical spell that reduces Xenon and most of the evacuated capital into mere atoms. After the attack, Princess Iris is beyond relieved to find Alexia alive, and the 2 sisters hurried out. The next day, Alexia recounts the events to an uninterested Sid, who tries to leave. She stops him and thanks him for the time he said he liked her fencing style because she's finally learned to like it as well. Then she points out that since Mrs. Xenon is dead, they can be in a relationship for real this time. He blatantly declines his offer and gets attacked by the salty princess. The Shadow Garden girl bosses have a meeting to report their recent findings. Everything seems to be going well, except a group posing as Shadow Garden has been going around committing crimes. They must hunt down and end the misdeeds of this fake group before the name of Shadow Garden is dragged through the mud. Princess Iris meets with Sherry, the daughter of the assistant principal of the Academy of Science, who is rumored to be the finest researcher in the kingdom. Iris requests her to decipher the function of an artifact that was found in one of the destroyed cult hideouts in the aftermath of the nuclear bomb spell. Although she is hesitant at first, she agrees because of her father's motivational pep talk. Poe and Skell feel bad their friend Sid got dumped by Alexia, and take him to a fancy new department store that sells all kinds of things not seen anywhere else, like chocolate. There's a huge line of upper-class people wanting to enter the store, and the waiting time is about 80 minutes. Wait, is this a Supreme store opening? Poe second guesses waiting that long because he's heard of a killer on that street that strikes in the dark. Sid admires the architecture of the store, which reminds him of the sleek and modern designs of buildings in his past life. Owen approaches their group and singles out Sid to take a survey inside the store. She escorts him through the store, making him realize it exactly replicates the department stores from his past life, which is a first for this world. She takes him to the top floor, where there is yet another ornate building. He enters to see a line of bowing women on either side, leading up to a throne, beside which a black-haired woman stands. He recognizes her as Gamma, one of the Shadow Garden members. She created this store and many other branches in and around the kingdom by recreating Shadow's descriptions, which he would call the wisdom of the Shadows. Stip recalls he did share little tidbits of his past life, but they'd only be vague details like chocolate was made from bitter beans sweetened with a ton of sugar and hardened. He's amazed by how her brilliant brain could come up with this creation from just his stupid words, but if anyone could do it, it's her because she's Shadow Garden's smartest mind but has negative 100 physical ability. He sits on the throne at the head of the room and finally feels like the eminence in shadow as his subjects kneel to him. Gamma reports that the stores have garnered billions in profit for the organization, making him one of the richest in the world without even knowing. Then she addresses the reason why she guesses he came all the way down here, the killer who dons the purest black and slaughters in the dark under the Shadow Garden name. They haven't been able to catch him yet, but she assures him the suspect will become past tense very soon. He realizes Poe was talking about that same killer and claims he knows who it might be and will look into it himself. Finally, Gamma introduces their newest member to him, named Nu. Even though she hasn't been a part of Shadow Garden for long, Alpha already sees high potential in her. Before leaving, he asks for 3 packs of their cheapest chocolate while pickpocketing some money from the pile. She gives him their finest chocolate for a sweet 100% discount. While the boys run back to the dorm in fear of missing curfew, Sid suspects Alexia because of the time she attacked him in cold blood after being rejected. He suddenly hears the sounds of swords clashing against each other and comes to a halt. He tells Paul and Skell to go off without him because he really needs to take a dump right now, and it's impossible to hold it in longer. He lets out a moist shart to really sell it. Paul and Skell understand his need to prioritize dignity over following rules and promise never to tell anyone that he took a shit outdoors. Once they're gone, he rushes to the scene because he can't let Alexia off the hook for misusing Shadow Garden's name. A friend committing homicide is totally acceptable, but she crossed the line. As he overlooks Alexia fighting off a cloaked man who keeps muttering, "I am Shadow Garden," he realizes she's innocent. 2 more cloaked people arrive behind her and she struggles to hold her ground. The true Shadow swoops in to save her and sentences the posers to death. The trio flees, but he pursues them and kills 2 of the men. Nu appears and takes the remaining survivor for questioning. The next day, everybody mysteriously knows Sid almost pooped his pants. Who knows how the word spread, because I know Paul and Skell couldn't either betray their bro. They use the box of chocolates to ask girls out but get rejected. Sid doesn't have anyone to give the chocolates to in particular, so he gives the box to the first girl he sees, which happens to be Sherry, who's buried under a pile of books about artifacts. At home, she's marveled by these mysterious but delightful sweet treats. Her father sees them and explains they're chocolates, the newest fad confectionery of the rich, and that the boy who gave them to her was probably confessing. He encourages her to give him an answer in an attempt to make his daughter expand her horizons beyond books. He starts having a coughing fit, making her worry, but he assures her he feels much better than before and that he's proud of adopting such a brilliant daughter. He is so going to die by the end of the show. The next day, Nu shows up at school in uniform to report the killer they captured didn't yield any information due to his mind being fractured by some intense brainwashing, a shared trait among the cult of Diablo's subgroup called the Third Children. It comprises orphans and children of poor families with a magical aptitude who are stuffed with drugs until they are brainwashed into mindlessly doing the cult's bidding. They think the goal of the cult was to draw the Shadow Garden out by using their name. Moreover, there have been confirmed sightings of Rex, one of the first children, a term used to refer to those who still have a sane mind after the drug brainwashing. New mistakenly believes Side's rambling to me he's already on Rex's tail when in reality he's whining about being signed up for the school's tournament by Pole and Skell. Nevertheless, by the time of the tournament, he warms up to the idea and decides to treat it as an opportunity to demonstrate the 48 techniques he mastered to play the part of the perfect background character. In the first round, he gets paired up with the school council president, Princess of the Oriana Kingdom, and the best swordsman in the academy, Rose Oriana. He couldn't have asked for greater fortune because she is the best example of a named character, and he must execute his role of the background character that gets disgracefully eliminated perfectly. The fight begins and he somersaults in the air and lands on his face on the very first strike, spewing fake blood in generous amounts. However, he's still got 47 techniques to demonstrate to the world, so he keeps persisting to end the match one defeat after the other. Rose slowly comes to respect his rock-hard determination and decides to give him an honorable defeat once and for all by using a powerful, magically charged attack. Sid can't wait to give the performance of his life, but the referee pushes him away and puts an immediate end to the match, proclaiming Rose as the winner in order to get Sid immediate medical attention. He cries about still having 33 techniques left to show while being carried away on a stretcher, while Rose walks away considering him the winner in terms of spirit. After the match, Sherry approaches him and commends him on his admirable resilience during the fight. She nervously gives him cookies she baked herself as a thank you and offers to start out as friends. Although he can't remember why she'd thank him, he has no problem with being friends until he realizes she's the daughter of the assistant principal of the Academy of Science. Her father says she's had a rough past, which is why she's so reclusive, but he hopes that Sid will be kind enough to be her friend. He doesn't have the heart to turn them down, so he nods in agreement and decides to lay low until she forgets about him. She doesn't forget about him, and he's all she can think about. She goes to visit Princess Alexia, who expects this to be a meeting about the artifact. Sherry helps herself to coffee, the latest delicacy, with a lot of cream and sugar, causing Alexia to judge her because she prefers it black. That's right, black coffee is the right way. Sherry doesn't say anything for a while, making Alexia wonder if she only came to hog the coffee, but she suddenly blurts out that she was wondering if Alexia and Sid are still dating. Alexia answers that they broke up a while back and were never really dating in the first place. This causes Sherry to be visibly excited as she rambles about how she recently became friends with Sid, how she really likes him a lot, and how she's so glad nothing has happened between them, leading Alexia to spill all the black coffee she loves out of furious jealousy. In Sid's class, 2 student council members enter to announce an election to fill an empty council seat. While they explain the rules of the election, Sid notices his form-shifting slime isn't molding to the shape he wants with magic. Suddenly, his class gets attacked by a cloaked group who call themselves Shadow Garden and intend to gain control over the academy. Rose courageously faces the intruders but fails to fight back because her magic no longer works and her sword gets shattered. Sid can't believe his ultimate dream as a young boy of his school being attacked by terrorists is finally coming true. Wow, he's definitely not an American. He wants to exploit this opportunity in the best way possible and be the terrorist's first kills, a fitting fate for a background character. Hence, he dives in and takes the lethal blow in Rose's place. This causes her to believe Sid sacrificed his life out of love for her. All of the students are led to the auditorium. Once the classroom is empty, Sid revives himself by using a technique to maintain a steady flow of blood to his brain even when his heartbeat temporarily stopped. Even though the terrorists went through the trouble of erecting an anti-magic barrier, he can still use magic if he refines it to fine threads. He heals his wound and continues onward. He decides to lay low and take out the small fries until nightfall, when he can make his grand entrance as Shadow. Why wait until nightfall? Obviously, because his pure black fit clashes with daylight, and these fake Shadow Garden imposters aren't even classy enough to know that. He sees Sherry doing a bad job of sneaking around and protects her by sniping the terrorists in her way. She deduces these intruders have used a magic obstruction artifact and must be here to retrieve the artifact she has. She makes her way to her father's office since he must have documents with more details, but trips down the stairs. Luckily, Sid is there to catch her and the artifact. They finally reach the assistant principal's office after Sid kills 5 more bad guys. Sherry browses through documents until she finds an artifact named Eye of Avarice and concludes this is the one the terrorists are using. It has the power to absorb all magical energy within a certain range temporarily, except for magic traces that are too big or too small for it to detect, and magic that uses wavelengths that it's been programmed not to absorb, which explains why Sid was able to heal himself and why the terrorists could use magic without any trouble. The most troubling fact is that once the Eye of Avaris absorbs all the magic it can hold, it releases it all at once in the form of a big blast. She worries that all the students have been gathered in the auditorium to supply a stream of magic energy to the eye and cause an explosion. Luckily, the artifact she has is the controlling unit of the Eye of Avaris. It has the capability of long-term storage of large amounts of magical power, effectively having the power to stop the eye from releasing its energy. She plans on activating the artifact and going under the auditorium to stop the eye from going off. However, all the tools she needs to fine-tune the artifact are back in her room. Sid offers to get them from her and dashes outside. On the way, he soundlessly kills 2 guards by Rex's side, causing Rex to cast a magic net around him to trap the stealthy intruder. However, Sid is already inside and attacks him, causing Rex to run in a panic. He enters a classroom filled with the bodies of his fellow terrorists, where he meets the same ghastly end by Sid's hand. New inspects the campus to realize her fiancé Marco is the sole survivor among Princess Iris Knights. She reports that the Shadow Garden members have already infiltrated the academy, but are on standby until the terrorists make their next move. Gamma is the only original 7 Shadow member present in the city, but she's not particularly helpful for this mission because of her lack of combat ability. Princess Iris and the Night Order seem to be in disagreement about what to do, but they may be their only handy reinforcement for the time being. Sid, now in the role of Shadow, focuses on the task of fine-tuning the anti-artifact and gathers all the things Sherry needs. He says they should be ready by sundown, so New prepares to ready the Shadow Garden to attack at that time. All the students sit helplessly in the auditorium, which is heavily guarded by the terrorists, and the leader of this operation, Gaunt Knight, a former member of the Rounds and active Diablos fan. Sherry successfully activates the artifact and steels herself to deal with this situation by thinking back to the time her dear father adopted her after her mother, a researcher like her, was killed. She opens a hidden path to the secret underground tunnels, traversing all over the academy to reach under the auditorium. While the other students face the fear of being killed at any moment by school shooters, God makes Sherry fight the hardest battle against bats and rats underground. She finally makes it to one of the auditorium's galleries and sees the Gaunt Knight holding the Eye of Avaris. She activates her artifact and throws it toward the knight. It glows bright gold and counteracts the eye, lifting the anti-magic barrier around the school. Seeing this, Rose makes the first offense against one of the guards and rallies the other students to act. However, they're still at a disadvantage because they haven't regained the magical energy that the Eye of Avaris absorbed. Rose struggles to fight one of the cloaked terrorists when suddenly he is killed right in front of her eyes. Shadow shatters the glass roof above them and lands on his feet next to her, charmingly saying she did a wonderful job as a beautiful sword wielder. Keep your wafers at home unless you guys want them rizzed away by Shadow. The students look around and realize the black-clad fighters still standing aren't attacking them. Shadow raises his sword and they all chant in unison, "We are Shadow Garden." The cult's reinforcements rush in, but the Shadow minions hold them off while the students evacuate the auditorium. Sherry looks for her father among the crowd but can't find him anywhere. The Gaunt Knight activates the fire rigs that the terrorists planted in the school to go off, causing the auditorium and the rest of the campus to catch fire. Princess Iris rushes in to see many of the students already outside. Rose tells her they were saved by a mysterious organization claiming to be Shadow Garden, but even their attackers call themselves by the same name. This confuses Iris on what their motives could be. Shadow follows the Gaunt Knight, who uses the chaos to slip away into Sherry's room to burn her research. He appears as Sid when he confronts the Gaunt Knight about his real identity being the assistant principal Lutheran, Sherry's father. He removes his helmet, proving him correct, and tells him his villain origin story. You see, he was the best swordsman the kingdom had ever seen, but when he reached the peak of his career as a member of the Rounds, he fell terminally ill. He looked for a cure for his disease and found potential in a particular artifact, the Eye of Avaris. Sherry's mother, a researcher hated by other academicians for being too smart, was researching its functions, so he funded her research until she decided it was too dangerous and needed to be handed over to the government for safekeeping. He was overcome with fury and killed her in cold blood without Sherry ever finding out. He adopted her and guided her toward continuing her mother's research for the selfish goal of finding a cure for disease. What a disgusting man. After hearing his sins, Sid draws his sword to fight Lutheran, but immediately gets fatally wounded and falls out the window from the force of the strike. Psych. He reappears as Shadow, and this time Lutheran can sense before their swords clash that he's at a disadvantage, so he unleashes the true power of the Eye of Avaris by using his controlling unit, which cures his body's weakness and fills him with magical energy beyond a normal human's scope. He thinks he's checkmated Shadow, because he'll defeat him and pin the blame on everything that happened in this incident on Shadow Garden. To his surprise, Shadow doesn't seem to care because he's not afraid of the entire world turning against them. Despite Lutheran's buff, he is completely outmatched by Shadow and is killed the same way he killed Sherry's mother. Sherry walks into the room and sees her father's dead body, causing her to fall into anguish. Shadow leaves after deciding it's better she never finds out her dear father's evil motives. In the aftermath of the Midgar Academy terrorist attack, Shadow Garden is blamed for the entire incident, and Shadow is one of the most wanted criminals. The students are given a much-deserved break for the recovery of both the injured and the destroyed school campus. Sherry tells Sid she won't be returning next semester because she's going to study abroad in Lagos, the city leading in science, to gain knowledge and conduct research on her new project. She expresses her disappointment that she couldn't get to know him more, but he returns nothing more than an apathetic goodbye. Before leaving, he asks her what she'll be working on, to which she ominously answers that it's a secret. Although most students have gone back home for their early summer break, Sid stays alone in his dorm because home is too boring, only to realize even his dorm is boring. The monotony is finally broken when he receives a letter from Alpha requesting his presence at Lindwurm. Divine Teachings is the most popular religion in this world and follows the word of Goddess Beatrix. Lindwurm is one of the sacred sites of Divine Teachings, where it is believed the goddess bestowed the 3 legendary heroes with their powers. In a flashback, we see Sid had pretended to be gravely injured after the terrorists attacked him in order to avoid suspicion. When Rose learned her knight in rusty armor was still alive, she went to check on him while he was covered from head to toe in bandages and confessed her love for him. Since then, Sid has been stuck with her as her boyfriend. He doesn't get a break from her during the trip because she chases him down to the station and asks to join, landing him in a position where he can't say no. Now, he regrets taking the 2-day-long economy class train ride for the background character experience when he could have sprinted there in a few hours. Alpha never mentioned why she called him to Lindwurm, but his best guess is the upcoming goddess trial. Coincidentally, Princess Iris and Alexia are also heading to the holy place of Lindwurm for the goddess trial and do a bit of shopping for the trip at Gamma's department store. After 2 long days of avoiding Rose in the train, they arrive at Lindwurm, where Sid finds many stores selling accessories and pins with the design of the left arm impaled with a sword. Rose explains that legend has it that one of the heroes named Oliver cut off Diablo's left arm, which has been sealed away in ruins known as the Sanctuary, located somewhere within the steep mountains outside town. Rose gets excited after seeing one of her favorite novelists, Natsume, having a book signing and gets in line. Sid checks out the novels and realizes a common theme in the titles One Piece, Estrella, and Dragon Ball Age. They're all blatant rip-offs of media from his past life, meaning this Natsume character must have also reincarnated like him. He gets in line to confront her only to realize that Natsume is actually Beta, who has been copying the stories Shadow told her from his past life because he thought she would take them as inspiration to write her own. She hands him one of her signed books, informing him that it contains details of their next mission. Later, he opens the book to find a message in another language which Rose identifies as an ancient script. She doesn't really know how to read it, but can tell that it's been written in extreme shorthand, making it hard to understand even if deciphered. While eating ice cream and sightseeing, Sid sees one of his Shadow Garden members, Epsilon, chase down a man from. So he helps her out by cornering him until she catches up and strikes him with 3 magically imbued swords, instantly killing him. She reports that their mission's target was Archbishop Duke, but he was killed by a Cult of Diabolos member who got away, leaving only his henchmen to be eliminated by her just now and forcing Shadow Garden to move to Plan B. Sid gets excited at the prospect of another round of fun roleplay with his OG friends and wishes her luck. If you've made it this far, comment your favorite waifu from this video. That's it for this video. Make sure to like and subscribe for part 2, and watch this next video on screen.